Hi there, my name is Donna Toski, and I am the co-founder of the Between Men and Women Couples Communication Retreat. So I'm just going to reposition myself here. And the founder of the Spark Communication Success System for couples. So welcome, I'm glad you're joining me today. And today I am talking about how you handle conflict. How you handle conflict is going to make or break your marriage. So what is your go-to strategy for handling conflict? And so I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to say hello. Tell me where you're listening from. And if you have any questions as we carry on, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll see what I can do in terms of answering that. So I've been doing couples retreats and working with couples, mostly married couples, some singles and people that are dating, but mostly married couples and couples in relationship, because I find that these are the people that have most at stake. They have time invested, they have kids, they have financial assets. And did I say all the time that they had invested? Yeah, they've got a lot of time invested. So I love to work with couples, and it's interesting because researchers in the area of marriage tell us that people wait 6 years too long to do something when they got some kind of an issue, or or they're having difficulties. Isn't that something? They wait 6 years before they do anything. So that's pretty amazing. And those same researchers have found that there's 4 conditions, 4 things that are going on in the relationship that pretty much indicate that divorce is coming. And so I'm going to talk about those 4 things very briefly. And then I'm going to talk about the dysfunctional strategies that we use to maneuver conflict. And these are strategies that just don't work for us. And if we insist on using those strategies, dealing with conflict, we're really going to run into trouble. So anyway, the 4 characteristics that researchers have noticed that are present when a couple is heading for divorce, the first one is criticism, and I guess that the criticism is not the worst one, but what that looks like is, well, I mean, we all pretty much know what criticism is. It's where we have some kind of a conflict, or we don't see things eye to eye, or we're not seeing the same thing, and what we do is we kind of jump on our partner, like we attack their character, we get critical about what they said or what they did, or even who they are, and it can sound like, wow, why are you, how come you started dinner so early? How come you're not listening to me? You never listen. Kind of like that, criticism. And then on the far end of the scale is contempt. And contempt is like, wow, it's like a real, there's these nasty beliefs that we have of our partner. And, it can be characterized by just a disrespectful way of addressing them, name calling, lots of sarcasm. So that's contempt, and that's the far end. And when we see contempt, then we know that we are in trouble. Contempt can be a tricky one to recover from, and it's not impossible, but it certainly takes effort. The third one is defensiveness. And really, defensiveness is in response to criticism and contempt. It's where it doesn't matter what's said. A person just gets so defensive. They take everything so personally. We feel unjustly confused, accused rather, and we find, it's like we're finding excuses for ourselves, is what it sounds like. So those are the 4 characteristics that researchers have found. If those things are present, that's a very good indication that divorce is coming. If we don't, get on top of that. So yeah. So I want to talk about the dysfunctional strategies that we use to handle conflict, or to deal with conflict, or to be with conflict. And it can be conflict over anything. And what is conflict? Well, okay, maybe we're not seeing something. This is what I say is basically, we're not seeing something that's quite the same, and then it's what we do with that conflict that is dysfunctional. So I've got lots of notes here because I've got, there's 9 of them. So those 4 things, oh, sorry, I didn't even say the last one. Sorry, after defensiveness is stonewalling. Stonewalling is where we just shut down. And what it can look like is either we leave the room, or we don't even respond to our partner. We just shut them out, or like talk to the hand. We leave the room. We just don't go there. So that's stonewalling, and that can be a hard one. And so those 4 things, they can occur that's how we are with conflict. But I'm going to go into a little more detail of our exact the strategies that we use. Okay, these are strategies that we use to deal with conflict, and you want to avoid these if you can, because there's a big cost, and each one of these has big side effects. So I've got some notes here just because there's so many of them, and I don't want to forget anything. So the first one I'm going to mention is it's an avoidance strategy, and we're hoping, when we use this, we're hoping that whatever it is just going to blow over. We're hoping maybe our partner will forget, or maybe whatever it is that's going on is just going to go away. Well, we know that doesn't work. It looks like it's going to work, but it's very temporary. It doesn't work. It's not a solution to dealing with conflict. Hoping the whole thing's going to blow over. So the tactic is like we do nothing. Or maybe we don't respond to a phone call. Our partner's phoning us and texting us, and we just don't respond. or maybe our partner is talking and we just change the subject. Here's a subtle way of using avoidance is through humor. And I've had many people. It's usually the women who will say, my husband drives me crazy. He makes a joke out of everything. And yet it's interesting because that was one of the things that she loved about him in the beginning was his cool sense of humor. But dealing with conflict, when we use that as a strategy, we can get into trouble. Now the reason I'm telling you all of these strategies, okay, is the first step in dealing with conflict. If you feel like you're stuck in your relationship or your marriage, and you're kind of going round and round, I'm guaranteeing you that you've got a pattern of using one or more of these strategies. Okay, so that's why I'm going to list these strategies for you. And the first step of getting out of this spiral or getting yourself unstuck is to recognize what is your strategy. And usually a person will use one or more. Okay, and I'm going to give you a little assignment or a little homework at the end of this. Okay, that I know will be helpful for you. And so like I say, here's Jacqueline. Awesome. Hi, Jacqueline. That's cool. I'm glad. She says that she loves these Facebook Lives and that she's learned so much from me, and I love that. That's cool. So yeah, so avoidance. Okay, that's a big one. And the problem with avoidance is that we never actually do get to the problem. We never do deal with the conflict, and it can really when we avoid, it can have us like lose credibility with our partner that we even can deal with anything. It can really create like a lot of hopelessness, and sometimes, the strategy is it's helpful to use it maybe when things are getting out of hand between the two of you and you don't want to go any further. If you're having an argument and you need to take a break, and then that kind of comes to our next strategies like withdrawal. Now, withdrawal can be helpful if you know that you're going to say something stupid or do something stupid. You should say something stupid if you keep on going down that path. So you just, you're going to leave the room. That's withdrawing. Withdrawing is really another way of avoiding. And it can be helpful, but we have to be careful because, if you're going to withdraw, you're going to leave the room, then you got to tell your partner, hey, I'm coming back. Otherwise, it's not so helpful, when you use that over and over again. So, withdrawal is like characteristic of where you're just really trying to reduce the interaction with your partner. You might avoid looking them in the eye. Again, it's a form of avoidance. You may not be forthcoming in what's going on with you. For example, your partner might say, hey, I can see that something's going on for you. What is it? What's happening with you? And you say, oh, nothing, and kind of look down. And so you're not being forthcoming. You're keeping things to yourself. You're being tight-lipped about things. You turn away. Maybe you are flat emotionally. Maybe you're hiding your disappointment, or you're just you've gone flat emotionally, and it's very obvious. Your partner realizes, like, okay, you've withdrawn. You're completely hiding out. Like I say, sometimes it can be helpful if you need to calm down and leave the room, but often when we use this strategy, we don't do that. We don't temporarily leave. We just withdraw. Third, dysfunctional strategy for dealing with conflict is like, I'm going to do it my way or the highway. Not even or the highway, just my way. I'm going to do what I want, and it's like I'm exercising a power trip. It's like a unilateral decision, a unilateral action, rather, where you have, if you're my partner, you have no say in it. I just go ahead. I go ahead and I do it. It could be like being pushy, where I'm overt about it, and I'm being bossy, authoritarian, and pushy, or I could be covert about it. I could just be doing something behind my partner's back. For example, we can't make an agreement on should we buy a new car or not, and I just go out and I buy a car, completely blowing you off and not even considering what you think about it or what you want to do about it. I just do my own thing. And covertly, it's where we can go ahead and do something, hoping we're not going to get caught, or hoping our partner is not going to notice. And that could be a purchase that goes on the credit card, where our partner's not going to see what that purchase is. Maybe I want to take a big online course. And and, you know, my husband says, well, you know, wait a minute, hang on a second, that's going to cost you $2,000. I don't think so. Or he says, no, I don't want you to do that. Or I don't think we should spend that kind of money. Or what the heck, you know, wow, what kind of a course is this? And I don't think so. And then I just kind of go ahead and do it and keep the, you know, the Visa bill out of sight. And then, you know, kind of thinking I'm going to deal with it, you know, whenever he finds out. But it's like, I've imposed my action and my decision, and that's it. And he's had no choice about it. And that's kind of covert, and where I'm kind of sneaking around and being surreptitious about it, and kind of hoping that I'm not going to get caught. And that can create a lot of resentment, you know, with the couple. The problem still is not solved, right? Where we haven't talked about me doing the course, where we haven't come to some kind of an agreement. And I mean, sometimes this can be used. Let's just say me and my husband, we've made an agreement that, or let's just say we had an argument about our kids' healthcare and how we're going to handle healthcare. And you know, what we're going to take them to the doctor for, and which doctors we're going to use, that kind of thing. And here's where this sort of thing can be helpful and okay, is if the kid actually has an accident and I have to make a decision and take action right now. So we may not agree, for example, on that the kid should be treated with a particular medication. Okay, but let's say the kid gets into trouble and has an accident. And so, you know, I go ahead and I take the kid to the hospital, and the kid is given this medication to get things under control. And you know, and that's it. So it's been an action that I've gone ahead and taken, and it can be helpful in that case. But otherwise, if it's just like a unilateral action on my part, you know, it's not cool. If that's how I manage and deal with conflict. Another dysfunctional strategy for dealing with conflict is triangulation, is what it's called. And I've done a couple of other videos on this, but what this is where I involve a third party. I create triangles. There's me, my partner, and somebody else that I'm usually complaining to. And the tactic is that I say I'm looking for advice, or, hey, you know, I need some advice, whereas actually I'm just complaining and venting. And what I'm doing is I'm actually looking for an ally, rather than talking to my spouse. If I have a problem with, you know, my spouse or some kind of conflict we're dealing with, I'm involving another person. And here's something that's interesting. I was working with a client, and she was an engineer. And she was with this fellow who was seeing somebody. I think he was in a man's group. That was it. He was in a man's group. And that group, they were kind of promoting the expression of anger, and that was a healthy thing. And I thought that was a bit odd, because I just have recently read some studies. There've been some studies done that's not such a good thing. That the more you tap into your anger, the angrier you can get. So I thought that was interesting. You know, anger fuels anger. Yeah. So like the idea is that, yeah, if you're angry, then you would express that with another person and talk about that. But I don't know. Like I say, studies are showing that venting your anger, venting your emotions can only often just makes us more emotional or madder. Anger begets anger. And now involving a third party to sort something out is not really triangulation. But often we say that's what we're doing when we're not doing that. We're just getting an ally. And we got to watch, because we're playing victim when we do that. Now, if you are genuinely consulting, you're really looking for help, and you're consulting a coach or a counselor or a third party that can really, you know, you're looking for some suggestions instead of venting. That's a different story. So that's triangulation. And really, you know, how it is that you're pretending to ask for advice, but you're not. You're just complaining. And you have to be careful with that, because when you enroll other people in your complaints about your partner, you can't take that back. And once you've sowed those seeds, you know, you've left them with something. So none of these strategies are good to use. But you know, looking for an ally when you've got a problem and conflict is not the way to go. The way to go is to go back to your partner, and I'm going to say a little bit more about that at the end of this. Yeah, you know, you start involving other people, and it gets real messy, and you might get a little bit of relief in the beginning of that, but it can cause resentment with your partner, and for them to not trust you. I've had many people, and it's usually the guys that will say, you know, man, you know, I don't like it that she talks to her friends about our troubles or what's going on with us. And I can definitely see that. I will, you know, coach women that there are other ways of dealing with conflict with your partner than talking to your friends. You got to be real careful about that, because before you know it, people can get together and you got a regular bitch fest going on. And your partner then not going to want you to get together with those friends, or they're going to say, well, wow, great, you're getting together with the girls to do what? To complain about me. Or even your family, you know, yeah, you know, you've involved your family now in our financial difficulties. Like, oh, awesome. Now they know, they have to know everything before we can even, you know, get a handle on our own problems and solve them. And they can feel like there's, you know, sides being taken. Okay. The fifth strategy that's dysfunctional, this dysfunctional strategy of like how we handle conflict, and that can really make things worse for us and have us be stuck, is manipulation. That's where we're kind of maneuvering behind our partner's back. So let's see. You know, we're using kind of an indirect means to make something happen. Could look like this. Let's say I want to go out with the girls, and my husband doesn't want me to go out with the girls for whatever reason. Okay, we got some conflict around that. And so what I do is maybe I make arrangements for somebody to come over, one of his friends, to ask him to go out, or to get him busy so that I'm free. And then I just kind of make that happen. You know, I make something happen for myself by manipulating the situation with him instead of being straight up about it, and then not telling him that I had anything to do with kind of massaging that situation, right? So yeah, it's like I'm not telling my spouse about what my goal is, and it's usually more than one person's being manipulated, where maybe I will stage events. You know, like if I really want my partner to talk to somebody because I think my partner should take that person's advice, and then I get that person to come over for dinner, and not letting my spouse know that he's got some advice coming his way, something like that, say I'm doing one thing because I'm motivated by a particular thing where really I'm motivated by something else. And, or I'm feigning emotion to get what I want. Maybe I'm say I'm so upset about something, and but I'm not really upset, but that I know that my spouse or partner will give in. If I start to cry. I knew a gal once that was totally her strategy, was she would try other things first, like stomp her feet and get pissed off, and when that didn't work, she would cry, and her husband just couldn't stand to see her cry, and then if the crying didn't work, then she went into deep depression. Interesting. And yeah, like don't ever manipulate. It just doesn't work. It just causes huge distress, and most of these things cause distress. But okay, next dysfunctional strategy for handling conflict is it's kind of like a yes or no deal. It's like a deal breaker. So it's how we frame the issue. We frame the issue in such a way that it's kind of like a yes or no deal. There's no gray. There's no other choices, but yes or no. So it could be that my spouse says to me, here's the deal. I got an offer for my dream job, and I'm going to take it, even though I've got to move to Europe, and I'm taking it. And you can either come or not. It's like, whoa, it's like dropping a bomb. In other words, there's no room for discussion. There's just no choice. And there's no consideration for the other person, right? We're setting up a black and white, it's black or white way to deal with this conflict. It can be really tough. There's no wiggle room. And, the answers to it are like either yes or no, or it's right or wrong. And often it involves making like a moral decision, and it's like an absolute demand. And so the other person really has no choice but to surrender or to fight. So that's the thing with all of these dysfunctional strategies is that they often they pull for a fight, or they have the other person feel controlled, and this type of thing, this yes or no, like framing it, like absolute framing is what it's called, can be brutal because it can lead to escalation very, very quickly. I mean, can you imagine? I've got an offer for my dream job, and it's in Europe, and I'm going, and you can either come or not. Wow. Brutal. It's where I just take such a firm stand. Now, where this type of thing can be helpful is if we're setting a boundary, and where we have to take a clear stand. If this, then this is going to happen. Like, no kidding. Maybe there's been some abuse, and you have to set a very firm boundary that, hey, here's the deal. Or let's say there's infidelity. Okay, there's been infidelity, and you're going to set a firm boundary, and you're going to say, here's the deal. If this happens again, 100% I am out. Okay, there's no choice there. That's absolute framing. The next dysfunctional strategy that I want to tell you about is revenge. It's like, here's the thing. This is interesting. They've done some studies on this, and recent research in neurology, and it shows that when we've been wronged, we actually have a craving for revenge. We want to get even, and I don't know what part of the brain that that happens in. And if anybody listening knows that, let us know. Just drop it in the comments section. So yeah, so Jacqueline says that her ex bought a trailer without her knowing. Okay, so that's kind of like that imposition thing. It's my way, and amongst other things. So she says, LOL, I made mistakes too, so I'm not trying to slam him, and he didn't understand why I had an issue with that. Here's the deal. We will use these strategies, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. And then we wonder why things are worse because we don't. Many of us, not all of us, but listen, I'll bet you for every single one of you that's listening, and I'm going to give you a little bit of homework here, you've used one or more of these. Maybe not that where you know you've gone and you've made a huge purchase, but I hear about that all the time in my practice. Wow, you know, my spouse, when I was away, went and spent 40 grand on renovations to the basement. Hello, $40,000. Wow, gone from the account. Anyway, yeah, revenge. So yeah, now researchers have discovered that there's a part of the brain that actually gets triggered and activated because we want to get back at that other person. Revenge is a bad idea, clearly. You know, it's doing harm or withholding from another person in order to balance the sense of wrong. It's like getting even. I mean, come on, don't we do that? Boy, it depends. It depends on what it is, eh? It's like, okay, well, you know, you went out with your friends a couple weeks ago and you didn't tell me, so what the heck? So that's why I went out with my friends and didn't tell you. Whatever. If you've got an example that you've used recently, out yourself. Put it in the comment section. Oh gosh. Or yeah. Oh gosh. I heard this from a couple that I worked with. She had spoken to him about the laundry and to please sort the clothes before they go into the laundry because, I don't know, one of his black socks got into the whites and she didn't see it. And the dye ran. And so she was angry about that. And so he had got this kind of this new sport shirt, and she tossed in a red sock, and the red bled into his shirt. Anyways, kind of not cool, right? But this tit for tat thing is like brutal. Okay, next, dysfunctional strategies. And I just want to say thanks for everybody who's joining me. And if you want to introduce yourself and let us know that you're here, would love that, and where you're coming in from. And if you've noticed any dysfunctional strategy that you use. So let's see, what have I commented on up till now? I've talked about avoidance, okay, how we will avoid. I've talked about withdrawing. We will maybe not look at our partner, won't even listen, yeah, just kind of take off, go into the other room, shut down emotionally. Or imposition, where I'm going to do it my way. We talked about that. We talked about triangulation, where we involve another person, and manipulation, where we will stage events or we will feign emotions to get what we want. And I talked about the yes or no deal. That's kind of like the deal breaker. Where we give our partner absolutely no choice. It's going to be this or that. And I just talked about revenge. And the next one I'm going to talk about is compromise. And that's like where we sort of split the difference. And you know, when we've tried other ways to deal with conflict, we will often revert back to this one where we will compromise. But I'm going to tell you a little story in a second about what I've seen in my practice, and I've seen it frequently, and it's just not a good thing to do. But compromise is kind of like this. Okay, I'll stop doing this if you stop doing that, or I'll stop doing this if you do that. It's like compromise. It's like we can't get to a win-win. So the reason why it's not so great is that both of us are kind of going without something. It takes the energy out of the relationship and it leaves us with less. And I would tell people, like, only use this when you can't get to win-win. This is like a last resort, because really what you're doing is you are taking a loss when you use this strategy. And so here's how I see this, and I see this often in my practice. So I run, like I mentioned, I run couples retreats, and I see this where one or the other agrees to come into the retreat if the other person will do something. Okay, like okay, the guy will do some counseling if he can get more sex. And actually, that's not a common one when couples are really in a lot of conflict. You know, sex is kind of not up on the table. But I have seen, okay, you know, we will get a motorhome yeah, I'll get a motorhome for the family if you give me more sex. I have seen that one. But in terms of caring for your relationship or your marriage, I think you want to be careful about compromising and making deals around that one, because what happens then is that the person who compromises and says, okay, well, you know, I'll go to this retreat, or I'll go to this counseling, or yeah, you know, I'll do some work on my marriage if you give me something. The other person's left nervous about that. And I even want to be sure, like when people do the retreat, I talk to every person that comes in before they come in, because I want to make sure that they got something at stake for themselves, that they want to be there, and that they're not just doing it because they made a deal. You know, it's like, that doesn't, it's not much of a commitment, let's put it that way, you know, and the other person knows it. And you know, it can kind of, it's just not the way to handle conflict. Yeah, you know, I'll work on my marriage if you do this for me. It's like, how about just you would work on your marriage so that it could be better for you too? That would kind of be a novel idea. Anyway, here's another strategy that we use, and dysfunctional strategy that we use to handle conflict, and that's being defensive. So, and I mentioned that at the beginning, being defensive can be brutal, because what can happen is that it's just like a way of being. It's very automatic, and it doesn't matter what the conflict is, the person just reacts with defensiveness, and it has the partner get really, really nervous, because they're left with the idea that they're just not heard, they're never heard. And what it is that the person that's defensive, yeah, they're actually not taking responsibility that they even heard what the conflict is. They immediately get defensive, and their back is up, and they're making excuses. And it leaves the other feeling very nervous that the defensive person just doesn't even want to hear, like, that there's an issue, doesn't want to, or can't even be with the notion that they might somehow have a part. Okay, so that's so it can be brutal. So what I want you to do, so I've listed nine dysfunctional strategies for handling conflict. And we don't realize that we ourselves will use these strategies. And like I said, we often use one or more or a combination of these strategies. And they really can make the situation worse because they're dysfunctional. Okay, you're not actually handling or managing anything. You are making the situation worse, okay? And so what I would like you to do is to think about your last conflict, or maybe even your last two conflicts, and identify the strategy that you used, okay? So maybe you used more than one strategy, and why did you use that strategy? Okay, just think about, why did you use that strategy? And did you get what you wanted? And at what cost? Okay, I just want you to think about that. And did you get the results that you were after? And what unwanted results did you get? Okay, so see if you can document the harmful effects, of the dysfunctional strategy. What did it cost you? So again, here are the dysfunctional strategies, and the reason that they're dysfunctional is because marriage researchers have pinned it down that there's 4 characteristics that, when present in a relationship, will spell divorce. And some of these characteristics are ways that we deal with conflict, or these other dysfunctional strategies contribute to these 4 characteristics. And so that's criticism, and contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And when those 4 characteristics are present in your marriage or relationship, you're heading for a split. And so what are the dysfunctional strategies in a little more detail? They are avoidance, where we just avoid conflict. And another one is withdrawal, where we withdraw ourselves, or we emotionally withdraw. Imposition, where we say it's my way. We don't even say it often. We just go ahead and just do our thing. It's like a power trip. Triangulation, where we invite another person kind of into the conversation or into the conflict. Well, we don't invite them, but we include them by maybe complaining to them. Manipulation, where that can be covert or overt. Number 6, kind of a yes or no deal, where it's either my way or the highway, my way or nothing. And revenge, where it's tit for tat. Okay, you got me, I'm going to get you. Or we compromise. And sometimes people say, like, oh, we need to compromise, and that's the way to deal with conflict. And it actually isn't. I recommend people take the word compromise right out of their vocabulary, but it's hard unless people understand. And the reason is that you're both getting less. I would rather see people go for win-win. Compromise, there's somebody who's losing, if not usually both of you. Okay, and then number 9, defensiveness. And here's the deal. So the first step to get unstuck is to recognize what dysfunctional strategy are you using. And then I'm going to give you another tip. This is going to be for another talk, but another tip is that you want to begin to separate the people from the problem. Okay, because in all of these dysfunctional strategies, you and your partner, or your partner, and how you're dealing with the conflict, how you're dealing with your partner, is that you have them equated to the problem. And so the first 2 steps of getting unstuck and getting out of this mess, this stickiness that you have with conflict, is recognizing your dysfunctional strategy, or the combination. What is your go-to dysfunctional strategy? And then secondly, separating the people from the problem. So I don't have any comments. I don't have any questions. So I just want to thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.